Hello, I'm Rachel from Douentza Garden in Ireland, and you are very welcome to this February garden tour. Now, I haven't made a garden tour video of the garden in February before because I think the technical term for it is that it's shocking early. And as we all know, in the temperate zone, our gardens are just waking up at that point in time. But today we're going to go around the garden and see what's looking good. And I'm also going to give you pointers on 4 jobs to do in February. If you do nothing else, at least do these 4 jobs. And they're not very hard things to do because, you know, let's face it, we all need to be eased into these things gradually. And March is the month when the garden really gets going. So let's just take it calm in February. Okay, so in terms of the weather, we've had a really bad winter. It rained and rained and rained here in Ireland for most of autumn, and then it was really unseasonably cold over the winter, and then we've had a very kind of dry spring so far. We're now in the middle of February, and today at last some rain, so it's really perked the garden up, and it's a great moment in time to show you around. So come with me and let's have a look at Douentza Garden in the middle of February. I'm going to start off by saying a great big welcome to new subscribers and also to those of you who've followed me for a while. You are the backbone of this channel and you've helped make it up to the almost 50,000 subs mark, which is where we're at now. Anyway, on with the garden tour. And if you're new, then just to let you know briefly that I garden in Southern Ireland and my climate zone roughly equates to US hardiness zone 9. Now, having said that, here in Ireland we don't use these hardiness zones at all. So yeah, in any case, take it as a guide. Now, I will also prefix this video by saying that in February, gardens look messy. All of those plants that looked fabulous last year have gone dormant, they've died back, and the garden is going to look like a bit of a mess until we get out there and cut back those perennials and remove them from the borders. So that's the point we're at the moment. And in truth, I've never actually shown the garden this early on before because I didn't want to show you a mess. But you know what? We all need to take encouragement where we can get it. And one of the things that really drives me out into the garden in February is the wonderful, wonderful, really tough plants that come up and just brighten up the day. If I'm ever feeling down in February, I want to go out there. I want to see my hellebores, I want to see my netted irises and all those beautifully scented bushes that so grace our gardens in February. Now, one of the most important flowers for this time of the year has got to be the hellebore or Lenten rose. And this is a beauty that I absolutely adore, so much so that I have a complete bed given over to hellebores, and I also have them planted in some other places in the garden. Now, what's not to love? These beautiful flowers come up from nowhere, even if it's frosty, even if it's snowy, and they are so tough that if there is a cold patch, if there's some snow, well, you know, the flowers seem to droop, but once the snow lifts and the weather warms, up they bounce again. Just absolutely wonderful things. Now, the ones I'm talking about today are chiefly the Orientalis group. So these are hybrids that were bred from Orientalis, and technically they're known as Hellebores x hybridus, which isn't very informative. They have long stems that emerge and then produce magnificent flowers in shades of pink, white, or almost black. and I absolutely love the almost black ones. I also love the doubles as well. I'm a big fan of doubles in any kind of flowers, and hellebores are no exception. Now, there have also recently been yellow varieties bred, but I don't have one of those in my garden at all. They really are quite costly. I'll get one in the end. And that brings me to my first job that you really must do in February, even if you do nothing else, and that is to cut back the leaves on your hellebores. Now, you may have done this during the winter, and if you did, good for you. You're a more adventurous gardener than I am. I usually leave the cutting back of my hellebore leaves till February, and I'm prompted to go out and do it because I see those buds coming up and I know that they're being detracted from by old spotty leaves. Now, it's important to cut off hellebore leaves for a couple of reasons, one of which is so that you can see the flowers properly, but also because they can harbour spores and diseases, and if you just cut them off and clear them away, then it gives the plant a chance to produce fresh new leaves without any disease. The next plant we need to mention in February is the snowdrop, and I am such a big fan of large swathes of white snowdrops in February. They just look magnificent. They're so white and pure and clean, and they kind of make us think of what's ahead with the gardening year. Now, I only grow the common snowdrop here in my garden, which is Galanthus nivalis. You can spend a lot more on different varieties that have slightly different green markings on the interior, green or yellow sometimes. But for me, I don't need that. I guess it's because in part my eyesight isn't as great as it used to be. But what I really love is just masses and masses of these snowdrops. Now, it isn't the moment to divide them and move them about so that you'll have masses next year. It's the moment to enjoy them. And I suppose the second important job for February is to make sure that your snowdrops look well. And that might involve doing a little bit of weeding around them, removal of a little bit of moss, and being very careful all the time not to break those nodding white heads. Here we have some double snowdrops, which I have spread out in this bed here and are doing really well. But the snowdrops, I suppose, that bring me most joy in February are not the ones that I have in my main snowdrop bed, which is tucked away a little bit behind my beech hedge. What is really bringing me joy in February are these snowdrops that I've planted on the edge of the borders that give onto our drive. So these are ones that I can see from the house. I'll be sitting in my kitchen and I'll look out and I'll see clumps of snowdrops nodding at me, kind of beckoning me to come out to the garden and to do a little bit of work. And that's wonderful. And I think it's very important for anything that flowers or does well in February that you plant it somewhere where you can see it from your house, because it's going to get you out there. Another absolute favourite of mine for February is the netted iris. And I have a big patch here, which it's over 10 years that these have been in the ground, and I look forward to them flowering every February. Now, this particular variety is called Catherine Hodgkins, and the pale blue leaves look really well when they're shown off against bare earth. So if you've got a few weeds in there, a few little clumps of grass and moss, and it's generally green underfoot, then your netted irises aren't going to look as good as they might do if you get out there and weed them. So again, this is the second job you need to do in February. You need to weed around your snowdrops, you need to weed around your netted irises, and I guess you need to weed around your hellebores as well to make sure that all three are looking tip top. over here we have a different variety of the netted iris, a dark blue one, which we've kind of missed. It's gone over now, but it was looking fantastic. And this one is really strong and comes up every year without the slightest bit of bother at all. And if we look just behind these blue irises, you can see a clump of stems, and these are my Epimediums. Now, if you grow Epimediums, they are a beautiful woodland plant from China that flower early on in the season. Not yet, but when they do, they send up spikes of yellow or orange, I think even red, tiny little orchid-like flowers. But you're not going to see them unless you cut back the leaves. And I got around to it this year, got out there, cut off all my Epimedium leaves even before the flower spikes started to come up, which was great because it was just so easy, clip, 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 and they were all gone. And now I'm just looking forward to a wonderful display of orange and yellow Epimediums very soon. So number 3 on that list of jobs to do in February is to cut back your Epimediums if you have them. And there's a little video I'm linking to up above of how to do that. Also Omphaloides, which is navelwort. If you have navelwort, then now is the moment to cut back the leaves so you can enjoy the flowers. And that brings me on to number 4 on the list of things you must do in February. And this is, I suppose, a less glamorous one. The first 3 jobs, you're going to do them because you're going to want to see the beautiful flowers, and that's going to motivate you to get out there. But the 4th job involves the compost, and that is one that you're going to have to motivate yourself to do. So in spring, next month probably, you're going to be cutting back all the withered stems on the tops of your perennials, and this is going to generate an awful lot of stuff that you need to put on your compost heap. And if your compost isn't in a good state, if it's still full up from last year, if it needs turning, then you're going to have nowhere to put the stuff that you take off the garden. And I guess you're going to drag your feet and stay indoors because, you know, you need to do that before you do that, before you do that, and it just is very demotivating. So in February, it's a great moment to get out there and sort out your bays. Now, I sorted out 2 of my bays, moved a lot of stuff into one, just freeing up a second one so that I could start the job of cutting back. Now we're going to have a look at 5 bushes that really earn their keep in the early spring garden. And we're starting off with a rhododendron. And this is a particular rhododendron called Christmas cheer. And it's called that because it is supposed to flower in December at Christmas time. And do you know what? It did this year. It flowered in December. And it is flowering again, or I suppose still flowering right now in the middle of February. So there were some buds that have just opened quite slowly, perhaps because of the cold weather. In any case, it's the first time I recall having this bush in flower in December right through to February. And I'm very grateful for it because it makes a lovely fresh pink area in the garden that again, back again to the beckoning, beckons you to go out there and have a look. So the next shrub I want to mention here is Hamamelis, or the witch hazel. And this one of mine is yellow, although you can get them in kind of, I suppose, candy coloured, orangey brown flavours. And the thing about witch hazel is it is beautifully scented. So this is one that's going to waft at you across the garden as you walk around. And the individual flowers, I guess this is where it gets the name witch hazel. They're kind of very spindly and delicate and very pretty. And mine here is underplanted with snowdrops, which I haven't yet gotten around to weeding yet. So I do have a lot of snowdrops though, so it's hard to get to them all in time. But the Hamamelis certainly earns its keep in my garden. Another fantastic scented shrub that is really low maintenance is the Christmas box or sarcococca. And this is one you can keep quite neatly trimmed. It lends itself very easily to that. And if you trim it earlier on in the year, you're not going to take away from the flowers. Now, the flowers are very insignificant and you mightn't even notice them, except that the scent comes to you on the air. So you're walking up the garden and suddenly, what is that amazing scent? And this is one that smells very much like jasmine, I guess, although it isn't related at all. So because of its fantastic scent, its neat shape, and the fact that you can keep it quite small, I think Christmas box is one to have in most gardens. Another fantastic scented shrub is this viburnum here, which is just coming into flower. And this one is, well, it's pretty in pink, isn't it? It's just opening its buds now. And this viburnum doesn't just flower in the early spring. It's also been known in my garden to flower later on in the year as well. So it will have 2 seasons of flowering, making it a worthy addition. And moving on now to the fantastic Daphne Jacqueline Postel, which is this vision in pink I have planted outside the greenhouse. And this has the most amazing scent of all. It is just fantastic. And it's a vision with its masses and masses of pink flowers. I think I actually have 2 bushes here because it does run. It produces suckers that, if you leave them, will grow into new bushes. So it's a fantastic, fantastic Daphne, perhaps the most magnificent thing in my garden right now. The final bush I want to mention is the camellia, and particularly the X. Williamsii group, which is the one that I favour. And this variety of camellia is called Debbie, with beautiful double pink flowers. A mature bush that, I think it's more than 20 years old and doing so well. And one thing I do notice is that there are a lot more buds on my camellias this year than there normally are. I wonder if it's to do with the particularly cold winter we had. In any case, I'm looking forward to a magnificent flowering on my camellia hedge, which is in a different part of the garden, as well as a magnificent flowering on this camellia Debbie. So now we're going to move on to primroses, and primroses are just coming into flower now in my garden. It's not their season. Next month and the month after will really be their season, but we do have a few precocious ones, like this cute little yellow double at the base of my bay tree. But isn't it just joyous with its smiley little yellow faces? And let's not forget crocuses. Now, some of you will recall that the autumn before last, I planted a whole load of Crocus thomasonianum here in the grass underneath a cherry blossom tree. Now, these are crocuses. They're not planted in a border, they're planted actually in the lawn, and I'm looking forward to them spreading and doing so well in time. And when the sun comes out, these little beauties, they just open their hearts and smile. Now I'm going to move on to a few kind of optional jobs that have been done in the garden so far this year. And one relates to my arches here, which you see behind me. Now, you may recall that these were a dark brown up until now, but now look, a fantastic lighter colour. And what we're looking at basically is the undercoat. So these arches, they're wooden, so they need to be protected. So I cut back the climbers that grew up them, even though some of them, you know, they weren't the type that should have been cut back, but it needed to happen so that the arches could be painted. Now, I didn't do the painting myself. I had the help of two wonderful volunteers, Xin Yue and Yao Yu from Taiwan, who came in here and have done a fantastic job on sanding and putting on the undercoat for these arches. In fact, I think the undercoat looks so good that I would prefer if this were the eventual colour for the arches, but no, the eventual colour is a bit darker. So stay tuned, and I guess in the next garden tour video you're going to see what the eventual colour of these arches is. And a big thank you to Yao Yu and Xin Yue for their fantastic work in getting this job sorted out. So another optional job that you can do in February is to move a few things, but be very careful. If you move plants at this time of year, there's a likelihood that things are still dormant, so you don't actually know what's planted where, so you can make mistakes and you can slice through things that you shouldn't be slicing through. However, if you're sure, some things can be moved. And there was a large clump of Talichia in my hellebore bed, which had been annoying me for a while. I really felt it belonged somewhere else. So out it came, it got dug up, and the result of that was that, of course, there's less competition for the hellebores that are around it, which is great, but also a small group of blue hyacinths, which was being squeezed out by the Talichia, now had space, and I lifted some of those and planted them elsewhere in the bed. Not the best time for moving hyacinths, but it had to be done. I had the space, I knew what I was doing, and I think very often the lesson is that when you think of something, even if it's not the best time, maybe you should just do it, because if you leave it on the long finger, then maybe you don't get round to it. So anyway, I did that. I moved those plants, and it has resulted in a bit of a space. And well, you know, there are hellebores elsewhere in the garden. I could have moved into this space, but why not take the opportunity to buy a few more? Of course, sorry, I forgot to mention, it's not the right moment to be moving hellebores anyway. You're supposed to do that in September. But what I did was I went out and I bought a few gorgeous hellebores, which I want to show to you now. So this is the first one, and it's a dark one, as you can tell, called Helena. And the great thing about buying hellebores now at this point in time is that you can see what colours you have, because they're in flower. A lot of them, you know, they're not named varieties, so you don't know exactly what flower you're going to get. But this is a dark one, and I love the dark hellebores shown off against white hellebores. So that's why I have bought a white one. And this one is called Hello Pearl. And isn't she just gorgeous? There I am again with my doubles. I absolutely love my doubles. And the white double against that dark, almost black flower is going to look fantastic. But I also got a third one, double Anna Red. And it seems to be an Orientalis type, so Hellebore X hybridus, rather than something else. And my husband went out and bought one for me, and he came back with a different type of hellebore, which is this one here. So this one is from the Frost Kiss series, and it's been bred because of its marbled leaves. So the flowers are nice, but the marbled leaves will persist during the summer, just kind of adding a bit of interest to an area in the garden that will not have a lot in it once the flowers fade. but it's a grand healthy plant. And I'm kind of thinking this is, I couldn't find out what has gone into the hybridization of this particular plant. It looks like Argutifolia or that kind of species to me, but again, I couldn't find out. But I will enjoy finding somewhere nice for that. So stay tuned for the end of the video when I'll actually plant some of these hellebores in my hellebore bed. And then finally, there are two other things I've been doing in the garden. And one of them is, I suppose, a must do for you as well if you grow hardy slipper orchids, Cypripedium, outdoors in your garden. And if you do, then you need to feed them with slow release fertilizer in February, which is really quite early on. And I got out there and I actually did it this year. I always forget, and it's not good for them. They do like to be well fed. So feed your Cypripedium in February if you have them. Now, I have also started the endless job of cutting back and weeding in the garden, and that will continue for some time. But we're off to a good start and I have time. There is time until summer rolls in, hopefully with lots of sunshine and lots of colourful flowers. So I guess I'd better get on with planting those hellebores, and other than that, I just want to end up by saying thank you for watching this video. It was a bit of a, I don't know, a new departure for me to make a garden tour video so early on in the year. If you appreciated it, then do let me know, and I will see you soon for lots and lots of different kinds of plant and gardening fun. What are you doing in your garden now? Is there something I forgot? Is there some essential February garden task that you do that you want to share with us here? I'd be glad to know it. Thanks for watching, and now on with the hellebore planting.